Hi students, today we're going to start learning some background information for our next short story, The Cask of Amontillado by Edgar Allan Poe. So before we start learning some of that information, I'd like to go over the learning targets with you. And we're going to still focus on the literary elements or devices. We can use those terms interchangeably. But for each short story that we've had so far, we focus particular literary elements or devices for each short story depending upon what that short story offers or what the author of that short story has emphasized in terms of those literary devices. You may see some repeat, but with each short story we are going to delve more deeply into those literary devices. Okay, so the first one is foreshadowing, and that's just hinting what is to come. Our next one is irony, and that is a storytelling tool that the author will use because sometimes things don't always appear as they seem. The next one is mood, and that's just what the reader feels when he or she is reading a particular piece. Setting, time, place, season, and so forth. Point of view, this is the way in which the narrator tells the story. So first person point of view would be like you having fun on the weekend with your friends and then coming home to tell your parents about it. You would say, my friends and I went to the beach and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so you're using that first person pronoun, I. You're telling the story from your own first-hand experience. Another point of view is second person point of view. It's not commonly used in many stories. You're going to see second person point of view more often. Well, for example, when you read directions, when you read the announcements that we give you each week to help you prepare for the week and to know the learning targets that you're going to be meeting for that week and understand what the assignment entails. That's second person point of view generally when the teacher says you are responsible for A, B, and C, okay? So that pronoun you're seeing there is you, okay? And then there's the third person point of view. And that is, for example, The Most Dangerous Game was written in third person point of view. So it's an outside perspective. And it's a person telling the story. So when we were hearing about Rainsford and Zaroff, it was either he, she, they, or their name, right? Those were the pronouns or the proper nouns that were used in describing the situation in The Most Dangerous Game. And then we have symbolism, and that's where something stands for something else. And the most concrete example I can give to you about symbolism would be our American flag. Okay, when we look at the flag, we generally think of freedom, right? And that's an abstract concept. Okay, so when we look at the flag, it represents or it symbolizes freedom. And you can probably think of some of your own examples of symbolism just after hearing that example. So once we're done with this short story, you should be able to identify and apply those literary devices or terms, elements, okay? A little bit of background information about Edgar Allan Poe. He is known as the father of the short story because he wrote so many short stories and they just became so famous, in fact, that we still read about them today. Most of the characters that he developed where we question their judgment and they're pretty unreliable, okay? A little bit of information about his own childhood. His father abandoned him and his brother and his mother when he was very young, and then his mother, unfortunately, also passed away when he was only 2 years old. He was adopted after that. He did attend college where he picked up the habit of gambling. He ended up marrying his biological cousin, Virginia Clem. Unfortunately, his brother and his wife ended up dying of tuberculosis. Okay? And most of his pieces The topics in almost all of his short stories are dealing with death, murder. They're just very dark, and the characters that he creates are very sinister. Okay? And his death, many people believe he died of alcoholism. Some speculate that he died of a drug overdose. But the most recent data shows that he actually died of rabies. Okay, so they looked at the DNA and they truly believe that he died of rabies. And some critics question, well, if he died of rabies, why wasn't there a bite noted? And to be honest, most people that have rabies don't even know or remember when they were bitten. So that's up for speculation. You'll have to think about that on your own. And if you're curious, you can do a little more research. All right. So moving on. There are some terms that you need to be familiar with when we begin reading the short story. The first one is Amontillado. Okay, and you'll see here a picture of wine, and that's exactly what it is. And you'll see it here, the label Amontillado, and it's in this cask, and that's where they preserve the wines, or they age the wines. Okay, they perfume the wines need to sit, and some of them are flavored with particular wood. Okay, I don't know much about perfuming of wine or anything like that, but I know that there's particular woods that they use when they're aging wines, and they hold them in these wooden casks. Okay, hence our title, the Cask of Amontillado. A little bit about Amontillado. It's a very expensive and rare wine during the time the story takes place. It's a type of sherry, and it originated in the 18th century in Spain. I believe the region was Montilla, but I'm not for sure on that, but I do believe the region was called Montilla or something similar to that. Now, knowing that it originated in Spain, if we were in Spain, we wouldn't call it Amontillado like many American people do here. It would be called Amontillado. So, fun fact for you. The next slide shows some images here, and this is during a secular holiday called Carnival, and that's going to be part of our short story. And you can see that people dress up in these very, they're clad in these very elaborate costumes. If you look down below here in the right-hand corner of your screen and look at the mask and these fine details on the mask, it's beautiful and very intricate. Okay, but people dress up, and it's a time for them to have fun, and there is a lot of excessive indulging in drinking and eating. You might compare it to Mardi Gras, okay, here in America. But where it really originated was, it originated or evolved out of the Christian observance of Lent, and that's a very solemn time, a 40-day period where people fast, so they give something up that's really important to them. Traditionally, it was meat, but nowadays people will give up just anything they find very pleasurable. So it might be chocolate, it might be ice cream, it might be Coke, because you all know that I love my McDonald's Coke, so it could be Coke. Just something that you really like, and it doesn't necessarily have to be food. It could be something that you do. So if you really like to game, you might give up gaming for 40 days. It really has evolved, and it's changed with our present time. But in the story, we do have Carnival, and like I said, it's a time of excessive and indulging. In fact, I believe in our piece, the author writes and calls it, or our narrator calls it, a time of supreme madness. Okay? Moving on. The next image, the next three images you're going to see here are just very large, impressive buildings. Okay, and we call those palazzos, and they're really popular in Italy. They're like castles or even places of residence. Generally, very wealthy people would live in a palazzo. Okay. Our next term is niter. And niter is really just salt from a rock, okay? That's what it is. It's salt from a rock. And right here, there's this ancient jar, and you can see how the salt has just built up and encrusted all over this jar. This image here is actually leading down into some catacombs, and we'll talk more about catacombs in a bit. And in our short story, you're going to actually hear our narrator talk about the niter that's just dripping down the walls, okay? So these walls are made of brick, you know, a stone, and as it gets older and older, the salt comes out of it. It comes essentially out of the stone, out of the rock, and it just encrusts, and it can be very hard to breathe around heavy masses of salt like this. Our next image is a trowel, okay? And if you pay attention here, that's just for people who are masons, and they build buildings for a profession. Okay, so you can see they put the wet cement over the brick, and then they build another layer. Speaking of masons, in our short story, you're going to hear about masons, okay? So the first one I've already explained. It's about an occupation, somebody who builds with stone or brick. And the other mason, you're going to find the word mason in this word right here where it says Freemasons. And that in the story just happens to be a particular fraternity. You might think about a college fraternity where like-minded people like to join certain fraternities because they share the same vision about any given topic, okay? And here is the symbol for the Freemasons. Now we're on to catacombs. And this will be our last slide we're going to look at today. Catacombs are a place where dead people are buried. So you can see all the skulls and the bones here. And this is going to be part of our story. Okay, so what happened was, over in many European countries, many years ago, people were running out of room in the cemeteries, or they weren't digging deep enough, and it was becoming very dirty. People were becoming ill because of this. So they started to bury their loved ones, their dead people. They started to bury them in these catacombs. And people who were very noble or who were very rich, wealthy, they often buried their dead right below their palazzo or their large home if they lived in a mansion. Okay, that's what they did. But they didn't just bury their dead down there. They also kept their casks of wine down there. Okay, it was an area, it had multi-uses. Okay, but you can even go over to Paris and different places today and visit some catacombs where you'll actually be able to see and tour, you know, the remains of many people. And that is about it. So catacombs are just an underground burial site. And just remember that if you were wealthy back in the day, you most likely buried your family members right below your home. Okay, so hopefully this is enough information to help you understand as we begin reading The Cask of Amontillado by Edgar Allan Poe. I'm excited for it because we're getting close to the Halloween season, and I think it's a perfect short story to read during this time. Thank you.